The British Border Boxing Control have ordered for Joyce to face Daniel Dubois for the British heavyweight title. Now, no sooner had they announced this that Frank Warren put out this tweet. Well, I don't really think it's actually Frank Warren. It's one of Frank Warren's team operating his Twitter account. And they put out this tweet on his behalf. Delighted the board have ordered at Daniel Dubois versus Joyce. Daniel has a tough fight on April 27th first, but we asked for the fight. Daniel wants it, and we will reach out to Team Joyce to try and make it happen this summer. And Dubois, in typically understated man of few words fashion, simply replied, no problem. Now, Joyce's manager, Sam Jones, has also spoken on this announcement. Sam Jones here says, as you know, Joyce is a man of few words, but when I turned my Wi-Fi on in midair yesterday, I had a very small and blunt message from him saying, make it effing happen. So let's just see how serious they are. Joe is mandatory for 3 major titles now. Interestingly here, Sam Jones is replying to a Kugan Cassius tweet. Kugan says, mate, as much as I would love to see it, this fight won't happen yet. Will it realistically? Sam Jones replied by saying, as we've always been told when we wanted the Jarrell Millers of the world, if you want it, you have to pay, but we are game. He goes on, says Joe is mandatory for the WBA regular and the European also. So as long as they realize Joe is the A side, here we go again, people. We're happy to talk about the fight. So that's where we're at with this fight at the moment. And, you know, I'm not criticizing Joyce for saying, or his manager for saying we're the A side or whatever, but it puts this situation into perspective. Joyce is the mandatory challenger for the European heavyweight title. And according to his manager, also the mandatory challenger for the WBA regular. So if you had a choice, if Joyce has a choice of fighting for the WBA regular heavyweight title, the European heavyweight title, or the British heavyweight title, which do you think he's going to pick? He's obviously going to pick the European or the WBA regular because he's trying to be moving himself up the rankings in a hurry. Daniel Dubois for the British, Daniel Dubois is a 10-0 prospect. And Joyce hasn't had many fights himself, but he was obviously a very experienced international amateur, fought in the World Series of Boxing, etc., etc. And he's trying to move into world contention sooner rather than later. So fighting the Daniel Dubois of the world may be a bit of a step backwards in terms of where he wants to go in his career. Now, of course, I would like to see it. I'd love to see Joyce fight Daniel Dubois. But I'm not going to be too harsh on Joyce if he decides not to take this fight because he's trying to move up into world contention. You know, he's trying to fight European titles, WBA regular, so on and so forth. It's the more logical direction for him to go. And I certainly would not be saying, oh, he ducked Dubois or anything like that if he decides to go in that direction rather than fight Dubois for the British. And as far as the whole A-side thing, who draws more fans? Joyce or Daniel Dubois? I actually don't know, to be honest. I couldn't say. I haven't really been paying attention to the amount of tickets the Dubois and Joyce actually sell. I would imagine that Joyce might be a bigger name in the UK simply for the fact that he was an Olympian, right? He was in the 2016 Rio Olympics. He won a silver medal. A lot of people in Britain, maybe even most people in Britain who watched the fight, thought that he was hard done by in that Olympic final. So he might have more of a high profile. But then again, Joyce has kind of been a little obscure as a professional in terms of the platforms he's been fighting on. He did fight on Channel 5 a few times when he was still with Haymaker. Recently, he's been fighting in the United States. Actually, to be fair, the fight against Burmester Verne was in the UK, but that was on the Eubank Jr. De Gale undercard, and I heard that show didn't do many pay-per-view buys. So his exposure at the moment I dare say isn't quite what Daniel Dubois' exposure is, in terms of the amount of fans that are watching his fights. So I don't know who actually has more clout at the box office. I'm not sure. But I can see why Joe Joyce might choose to go in a different direction, legitimately. And I can see why Daniel Dubois, or at least his team, might not actually be serious about the Joe Joyce fight. Of course, they're going to say that they are, right? Because they want to build Daniel Dubois up as a wrecking machine who's afraid of nothing and no one. But would his team really put him in with a Joe Joyce right now? His team have been talking about putting him in against Nathan Gorman. That's an in-house fight. So it's a win-win situation. To be fair, if they were to put Daniel Dubois in with Joe Joyce, it's not like they're putting him in with a major rival, right? Joyce is with Al Heyman, but who promotes fights on behalf of Al Heyman? Is it going to be Poxon? I don't think Poxon is really a major rival for Frank Warren right now. Maybe Frank Warren wouldn't be worried, about putting Joyce in with a Poxon, putting Dubois in with a Poxon fighter. He might be a bit more cautious about putting him in with an Eddie Hearn fighter, depending on who it was, So, yeah, and some people are saying that it's too early for Dubois, and Frank Warren isn't really serious about it, and he knows that Joe Joyce is going to go in a different direction. And that's why he's saying this, because it's very unlikely that Joyce would be interested in fighting for a British title when he's got WBA regular right on his doorstep, and he's also got the European heavyweight title right on his doorstep. So, yeah, maybe Frank Warren is going to price himself out of the fight. Some people might feel that he's going to say, well, Dubois does this and Dubois does that, and he should be the A side. It's going to be a problem if he comes with that kind of attitude, because here we have Sam Jones, Joyce's manager, saying that he's the A side, and that Team Dubois need to recognize that. So, yeah, I personally feel that it's unlikely this fight happens. I could be wrong, and in fact, I hope I'm wrong. How about that? I hope I'm wrong, because just from an entertainment standpoint, I would love to see Daniel Dubois face Joe Joyce. I think it'll be a very, very explosive and entertaining fight. But when I just look at the situation realistically, I don't know how likely that is. I suspect that they're going to be going in different directions. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If somehow, some way, miraculously, this fight did come off in summer this year, who would you guys be picking? I would personally be leaning towards Joe Joyce. Yes, I know Daniel Dubois looks spectacular, knocking over journeyman and what have you, and he's a very strong young man. But Joe Joyce is vastly experienced. Joe Joyce has fought elite level amateurs. Joe Joyce has fought elite level fighters in the World Series of Boxing. He's sparred countless rounds with people like Anthony Joshua. He's a very experienced guy, Joe Joyce. Even though his professional record doesn't say that, the World Series of Boxing is virtually semi-pro anyway, and elite level semi-pro. And obviously the elite level amateurs he fought, Joyce is very, very experienced. He's been in there with people like Daniel Dubois with those kind of attributes loads of times in the amateurs. He's been in there with big punchers, guys who hit just as hard as Dubois or harder than Dubois, loads of times in the amateurs and in the World Series of Boxing. So I don't think there's anything about Dubois that's going to surprise or shock Joe Joyce. I personally don't think so. But there may be certain things about Joe Joyce which would surprise or shock Dubois, particularly if the fight goes later on. Both guys are slinging a lot of leather, I would edge towards Joe Joyce winning the fight. If Dubois was able to beat Joyce and come through, that would be a hell of a name to have on his resume, because that's an unbeaten, very experienced top amateur who's turned professional. That would be a hell of a person to have on his resume. But anyway, let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. It's happening, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.